I'm Jack, 41 years old. And if you told me a year ago that the people I loved most would start treating me like a walking ATM, I'd have laughed right in your face, but life has this brutal way of peeling back the mask people wear, and when money's involved, you see who they really are. I grew up in a middle-class home. Nothing fancy, just steady. Mom was a nurse, Dad fixed cars, and between the two of them, we had enough to live decently. I was the quiet one, the kid who saved every dollar, tinkered with broken radios, and thought finding spare parts at a garage sale was better than Christmas. I learned early that being careful with money wasn't stingy, it was survival. My younger brother Adam? The complete opposite. The dreamer. The visionary. The kind of guy who could charm his way into someone's wallet but couldn't hold a job longer than a season. My parents called him our little genius. Me? I was the responsible one. Which in family terms basically meant the guy who pays when things go south. By my late 20s, I'd built something for myself. I worked my way up in IT, then launched a small remote consulting business. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well, and for once, I could breathe. No debt collectors, no late rent, no emergency ramen dinners. Just stability. Over the years, I saved aggressively. By 40, I had a good cushion, not millionaire money, but enough to finally feel safe. My family knew I did something with computers. Adam knew I was comfortable, but nobody, and I mean nobody, knew the numbers. I liked it that way. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. I was on my balcony, coffee in one hand, half listening to a podcast when my phone lit up, Adam. I hadn't heard from him in months. I figured maybe it was a, hey man, how's life, kind of call. Nope. The second I answered, he launched into a pitch like some overcaffeinated startup bro. Jack. Bro. I finally cracked it. This is the one. I groaned. You said that about the food truck and the crypto. Dude, no, listen. This one's different. I met this guy from LA, serious connections. We're starting a luxury energy drink line. All natural, zero sugar, high-end packaging, marketed for athletes. It's gonna blow up. I waited, sipping my coffee. Okay, and? I just need a little startup capital. Small stuff. 50 grand. Maybe 60 tops. You'll double it in 6 months, easy. I almost spit my coffee all over the railing. 60,000? Adam, that's not small stuff. That's a year's salary for most people. Yeah, but not for you, he laughed. Come on, man, you've been doing that computer thing forever. You're loaded. Loaded. That word hit me like a slap. As if all the years I'd spent pulling all-nighters, grinding on weekends, and saying no to vacations didn't count. As if money just magically appeared in my account because I was lucky. Adam, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I'm not investing in another one of your ideas. You still owe Dad for that restaurant mess. That wasn't my fault, he shot back immediately. The city shut it down, remember? Because you didn't read the permit, I said flatly. You opened a grill in a zone meant for retail. He groaned. You always gotta bring up the past, huh? This is different, Jack. I've got a plan this time. I just need someone who believes in me. I exhaled. Belief doesn't pay suppliers. Sorry, man. I'm out. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence, and then his voice changed. Cold. Flat. Wow. Guess family doesn't mean much to you anymore. And he hung up. For a few days, I brushed it off. Classic Adam drama. Then, my mom called. Jack, honey, she started, sweet as pie. Too sweet. I heard you talk to Adam. Yeah, I said slowly. Well, she sighed, he's really putting his heart into this business. You know how much potential he has if people would just give him a chance. I rubbed my forehead. Mom, he's had a dozen chances. This time's different, she insisted. He's growing up. You could help him get started, it would mean so much to your father and me. Mom, I'm not giving him 50 grand. That sweetness vanished instantly. Why not? You're single. You don't have kids. You can afford it. We've always supported you. I almost laughed. Supported me? I paid for my own textbooks. My own rent. My own car. When my laptop broke in college, I sold my bike just to buy a used one. Support wasn't exactly their strong suit. I'm sorry, Mom. But no. She went quiet for a second, and then, soft but sharp, don't come crying to us when you need help someday. Then she hung up. First time in my life my mother ever hung up on me. Over the next week, the guilt train came in full force. Dad called, doing his best, disappointed patriarch voice. You know, your brother's had a tough run, Jack. This could change his life. My aunt texted, he's your family. Money comes and goes, but blood doesn't. Even my cousin chimed in, bro, 60K is nothing for a successful guy like you. I started ignoring them all. Then the passive-aggressive phase hit. Adam posted on Facebook, some people act rich but forget who helped them get there. Mom commented a heart emoji. My uncle liked it. I wanted to respond so badly. But I didn't. Because sometimes silence screams louder than words ever could. Then, 2 days later, my dad called again, voice tense. Jack, your brother's at the bank right now. He says you agreed to co-sign his loan. They just need your confirmation. What? I nearly dropped my phone. No, I didn't. Well, Dad said, hesitant now, he told us you did. You should just help him out, son. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My heart was pounding like I'd just run a mile. Co-signing a loan without my permission? That wasn't just reckless, that was fraud. I immediately called the bank. My voice was shaking, but I made it clear. Do not approve anything in my Name. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my phone. And something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just clarity. For years, I'd been the good son, the reliable one who kept everyone afloat. But now, I saw it plain as day. They didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as a wallet with a heartbeat. And that realization? It hit harder than any insult ever could. The next morning, I woke up with this strange, quiet certainty that I needed to disappear. Not forever, but long enough to breathe without someone tugging at my sleeve for a favor. Before I could even think twice, I logged into my accounts, transferred every cent I had into a new bank, one my family didn't know existed. I moved savings, investments, emergency funds, everything. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a flight. One way. Destination didn't even matter. Portugal. I'd never been, but I'd seen pictures, golden cliffs, blue water that looked like glass, slow sunsets that didn't rush anywhere. It felt safe. As I packed my suitcase, my phone started lighting up. Mom. Then Adam. Then Dad. I flipped it face down, zipped my bag, and walked out. 12 hours later, I was sitting in a cramped airplane seat, watching the clouds turn pink and gold. When I landed in Lisbon, my inbox was already overflowing, dozens of missed calls, texts, voicemails. I didn't open a single one. That night, I found a small seaside restaurant overlooking the Atlantic. The air smelled like salt and grilled fish, and for the first time in years, I actually tasted my food. I sipped wine, listened to the waves, and watched the sun melt into the sea like liquid gold. I remember thinking, so this is what peace feels like. Then my phone buzzed. A single message. From Mom. Cosign his loan or don't bother coming home. I just stared at the screen. The glow from it reflected in my wine glass, cold and unreal. Outside, the ocean kept rolling in, steady, endless, uncaring. Something in me hardened right then. By midnight, I'd moved everything. Savings, stocks, retirement fund, gone from their reach. Every last dollar tucked somewhere they couldn't find. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 63 missed calls. A new group chat appeared, family emergency. That's when I knew this wasn't going to stop. They weren't pleading anymore. They were plotting. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen more messages, all different flavors of guilt and manipulation. We just want to talk. You're breaking your mother's heart. You can't just disappear, Jack. And from Adam, you'll regret this when I'm rich and you're begging for help. I sat on the balcony of my Airbnb, the ocean whispering against the cliffs below, and realized something simple, painful, and final. Peace comes with a price. And my family thought it was cheap. I didn't respond. Didn't block them either. I just let the notifications pile up like static in the background, a digital storm I refused to walk into. But in my family, silence wasn't neutral. It was war. 2 days later, I got an email, not from them, but from my landlord back in Seattle. Hey Jack, sorry to bother you, but your brother stopped by the property asking for a copy of your lease. Said he was handling your affairs while you were abroad. I didn't give him anything, of course, but thought you should know. I actually laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Handling my affairs? Adam couldn't handle a grocery list, let alone someone's finances. But that email told me something worse. They weren't just angry. They were coordinating. That afternoon, I called Ethan, an old friend and the lawyer who'd helped me draft my business contracts years ago. Hypothetically, I said, if a family member tried to impersonate me to access legal or financial info, what could I do? He chuckled. That's not hypothetical, is it? Nope. Keep a paper trail, he said. Save every message, every email. If anyone forges your signature or touches your data, it's fraud. You're covered. But Jack, are you sure it's just your brother? I hesitated. Meaning? Meaning, he said quietly, someone's enabling him. Probably your parents. He wasn't wrong. The next few weeks blurred together. I'd wake up in Lisbon, make coffee, walk along the coast, then check my phone once a day, just once, to read whatever new emotional grenade they'd lobbed my way. Some days it was pity. Adam's under so much stress. He just needs someone to believe in him. Other days, accusation. You're selfish. You left us to deal with everything. And sometimes, guilt. Your father's blood pressure has been through the roof since you left. Hope you're happy. I'd close the messages, stare out at the sea, and feel that strange ache, the one that's equal parts anger and grief. Because honestly, they hurt the same. Then one morning, things got darker. I logged into my old bank account, mostly out of curiosity, and froze. A $5 withdrawal. Not from me. Tiny, almost meaningless. But I knew what that meant, someone was testing access. I called the bank immediately. Mr. Carter, the rep said, it looks like a login from your home IP address. Do you share access? No, I said. I live alone. They froze the account on the spot. But that tiny transaction said it all. Someone, Adam, or maybe my parents, still had my old login. And they were seeing what they could get away with. The next day, Mom called. Her voice trembling, soft, the practiced kind of hurt. Jack, why are you doing this? We're your family. Mom, I said carefully, did you or Dad log into my account? There was silence. Then a sharp inhale. Your father just wanted to check you were okay financially. You've been ignoring us. We were worried. By stealing my password? Don't use that tone with me, she snapped, her sweetness evaporating. You've been acting like a stranger. Running off like a criminal. We raised you better than this. I didn't run off, I said. I left. Same thing, she hissed. When I didn't reply, she sighed dramatically. Fine. If you want to abandon your family, go ahead. Just remember who took care of you when you had nothing. That line hit different now. It wasn't affection. It was a transaction. Every act of love came with an invoice attached. And I was done paying. A week later, Sarah, a mutual friend from back home, called me. Her voice was hesitant. Jack, this is awkward, but did you really promise to invest in Adam's business and then ghost him? My chest tightened. He told you that? He told everyone that, she said softly. He even showed people text messages, ones that make it look like you agreed to send him money. My stomach turned cold. He forged messages? Looks like it, she said. He's been telling everyone you ruined his life. For the rest of that day, I couldn't focus on anything. I just sat there, watching the Atlantic crash against the rocks, replaying every memory, every family dinner, every time I cleaned up one of Adam's messes. And I realized something brutal. This wasn't the first time he'd lied to save himself. It was just the first time I refused to be the one who paid for it.By the time I opened social media that night, it was already too late. The wildfire had spread. Adam's posts had blown up, full of half-truths and outright lies, and the comment section was a feeding frenzy. Wow, can't believe your own brother would do that to you. Family's supposed to have your back. Some people forget where they came from. I didn't reply. Didn't defend myself. But inside, something was twisting, this quiet, boiling storm I couldn't shut off. A few days later, Mom called again. But this time, her voice wasn't sharp or guilt-laden. It was soft. Fragile. The kind of tone she used to use when I was a kid and scraped my knee. Jack, honey, Adam's in trouble. I stayed silent. He took out a short-term loan, she continued. The business deal fell through, and now the collectors are calling. He's really struggling. They might seize his car. His car? I said dryly. You mean the one he bought with the money from my old laptop sale? She ignored that jab completely. He's desperate, Jack. Please. If you could just help with this one last thing. Stop. My voice came out quiet, but final. Excuse me? Stop asking. Stop pretending this is just a favor. You're asking me to clean up his mess again. And I'm done. Her tone flipped instantly, sugar to acid. Don't speak to me that way. We're family. We help each other. I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. You don't help me, Mom. You use me. Silence. Then I heard her breath catch, sharp and indignant. You've changed, she hissed. I finally grew up. The line went dead. That night, rain tapped softly against the window of my Lisbon apartment, a steady rhythm that should have been comforting. But all I could think about was how quiet it was. And how I didn't miss them. Not the guilt trips, not the noise, not the fake warmth. What I missed was the idea of family, the illusion that if I worked hard enough, they'd someday treat me fairly. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address, but the postmark said Washington State. Inside was a single, neatly typed page. Jack, this is your last chance to do the right thing. Adam's loan is in collections and your name is being dragged through the mud. You can fix this before it gets worse. Family always comes first. No signature. Just that line. Family always comes first. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. How far would they go this time? Identity theft? Lies? Public humiliation? And then it hit me, they counted on my silence. My avoidance wasn't peacekeeping, it was permission. The next morning, I checked Adam's social media again. His profile picture had changed, him leaning against a rented sports car, sunglasses on, smug grin plastered across his face. Caption, don't worry, the empire's still rising. Some people can't stop greatness. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments cheering him on. And buried near the bottom, one from Mom. Proud of you, son. Keep pushing forward, red heart. That one hurt more than all the rest combined. Because that's when I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a declaration. I barely had time to process before my phone rang. It wasn't Mom. Wasn't Adam. It was my bank manager. Mr. Carter, he said carefully, we received a request this morning to verify your identity for a new joint account application, under your name and your brother's. Did you authorize that? My heart stuttered. No, I said slowly. I did not. He hesitated. We flagged it as suspicious, but it had your full personal information. Address, social security number, and your signature. My pulse roared in my ears. My signature? Yes, sir. An exact match. I just sat there. Frozen. The faint crash of waves from the ocean below the only sound in the room. They hadn't just tried to guilt me. They were trying to be me. When I finally hung up, I felt something inside me turn to ice. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about control, and they were about to learn what happens when the responsible one stops playing nice. The next few hours were a blur. My phone kept ringing, bank calls, security alerts, even a few unknown numbers, but my hands were shaking too badly to hold it. For years, I thought betrayal was emotional. That it hurt because it came from people you loved. But this was something else entirely. It wasn't just betrayal, it was an ambush. Calculated. Cold. Deliberate. That night, I sat by the window, staring at the dark Atlantic. The waves rolled in, indifferent and endless, and I tried to sync my breathing to their rhythm. Somewhere across that ocean, the people who raised me were trying to steal my name. It didn't even feel real, like I was watching someone else's life implode in slow motion. The next morning, I called the bank manager back. Can you send me everything related to that joint account request? I asked. He hesitated. Mr. Carter, are you planning to take legal action? I just need to see it. An hour later, the email came through. A PDF attachment. One click, and there it was, my name, my address, my birth date, all perfectly filled out. And at the bottom, my signature. Or at least, an exact replica of it. But what froze me wasn't the forgery itself. It was the handwriting scrawled above it in blue ink, scanned onto the form. Jack approved over the phone. I'll bring the signed copy later. Mom will verify. I read it 3 times before the words fully registered. Mom. Not only had Adam forged my name, she had vouched for it. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, but eventually the shock burned off and something colder took its place. This wasn't the kind of anger that makes you yell or pace around. This was quieter. Heavier. The kind that sits under your ribs like a loaded gun, waiting. I forwarded the file to Ethan, my lawyer friend, with a short note. They used my info. Need to talk. He called within minutes. Jack, he said, voice grave. I looked at the document. This is serious. Whoever did this committed fraud, maybe even full-on identity theft. The handwritten note helps. It proves intent. Can they actually get in trouble for this? I asked. My voice barely sounded like mine. Oh, definitely, he said. Then paused. But Jack, are you sure you want to go down that road? We're talking about your family. I let out a bitter exhale. Family? I said quietly. That word expired a long time ago. Still, I didn't press charges. Not yet. Something in me needed to know why. Why my mother, of all people, would cross that line. So I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice brittle but composed. Jack. Did you tell the bank I approved a joint account with Adam? There was a pause, just long enough for me to know she was about to lie. Of course not, she said smoothly. I don't know what you're talking about. I have the document, I said. Your name's right there. Another pause. Longer this time. Then she sighed. Your brother's under so much pressure, Jack. He just needed help getting things in order. You weren't responding. So you pretended I said yes? Her voice hardened instantly. We didn't pretend. We just did what needed to be done. You're his brother. For a second, I couldn't even speak. My throat felt tight. Mom, that's illegal. She scoffed, a sharp, dismissive sound. You always make everything so dramatic. You think I don't know you? You'd have helped eventually. You just needed a push. My chest went hollow. The disbelief was so strong it left me numb. You forged my name, I whispered. We didn't forge anything. We just moved things forward. You're so stubborn sometimes. Then, softer, but somehow sharper. You don't understand what it's like watching your family fall apart. Your family. Not our family. Yours. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of that word anymore. I hung up. And this time, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stared out at the sea, listening to the waves crash against the rocks. Because I knew what was coming next. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight back. My hands were shaking again, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was something sharper. Because now, the betrayal wasn't a shock. It was proof. Every gut feeling I'd ignored, every moment I'd brushed off as paranoia, it was all real. The next few days passed in a blur. I moved like a machine, no emotion, just tasks. I closed every old account, froze my credit, changed every password. Added 2-factor authentication to everything, from my email to my tax records. Ethan helped walk me through most of it, but even he sounded uneasy. It's not every day you have to lock yourself out of your own family, he said quietly. Meanwhile, the messages didn't stop. From Adam, you ruined everything. From Mom, you didn't have to embarrass us like that. From Dad, this isn't how family solves things, Jack. I ignored all of them, until one morning, a text from an unknown number appeared. A photo. Adam stood in front of my parents' house, grinning, holding up a printed document. My signature, forged again, bold and clear underneath. And scrawled across the page in marker. Guess we'll do it our way then. I just stared at it. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it. Our way? My way never involved crime. His apparently did. I called Ethan again. What happens if they keep doing this? He exhaled. Then we escalate. But Jack, they're getting desperate. And desperation? That's good. It leads to mistakes. He was right. And a few days later, I found one. A notification pinged my inbox, password reset requested. For my old cloud storage account. The one I hadn't touched in years. I hadn't requested it. I checked the IP logs, same old Washington address. This time, though, I didn't panic. I smiled. Because that storage account wasn't empty. Inside was everything. Old business messages, scanned checks, debt receipts, screenshots, years of proof that I'd been the one cleaning up Adam's messes. I had documentation of every loan he'd begged for and never paid back. And mixed into those folders? All the manipulative texts from my parents about this business idea. Every guilt trip. Every lie. Every fake apology. I made copies. Many copies. Still, I wanted to see how far they'd go before I pulled the trigger. Didn't take long. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a Lisbon cafe when my phone rang, a number from my hometown. I answered. Jack Carter, a woman's voice asked. This is Rachel from Evergreen Financial. We just have a few questions about your business loan application. My stomach sank. Excuse me? Yes, the application for startup financing under Carter Innovations. You listed your brother as a co-founder. I nearly dropped my cup. That's not my company. I never applied for any loan. There was a pause. Well, your documentation says otherwise. Driver's license, tax ID, even proof of funds, all under your name. Send me a copy, I said, my voice cold. Minutes later, the email came through. I opened it right there in the cafe. There it was, my ID scanned, cropped, and attached to a sleek, buzzword-filled business proposal. Fake numbers. Fake projections. And at the bottom, my digital signature. They'd done it again. But this time, it wasn't just forgery. They were using my identity to take out debt. I forwarded everything to Ethan. His reply came almost instantly. Jack, this crosses into felony territory. You need to act, now. I stared at my phone for a long time, the coffee in front of me going cold. Every part of me wanted to believe there was still a way back. That if I called Mom, or if Adam finally realized how deep this had gone, maybe, something could still be fixed. But the truth was right in front of me. They weren't going to stop. That night, I started listening to my old voicemails. Dozens of them. Most were just noise, but one made me pause. Dad's voice, low, tired, trying to sound reasonable. Jack, your mother's upset. She said you called her a criminal. You need to apologize. Adam's just trying to make something of himself. You know he looks up to you. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I replayed it 3 times. Not once did he say what they did was wrong. Only that my reaction was the problem. That's when something inside me went quiet. The last thread of hesitation snapped. But I didn't lash out. I didn't threaten or warn them. I just went still. For the next week, I built my case. Methodically. Calmly. Like I was coding a firewall around my own life. Every document. Every text. Every forged file. I saved them all, multiple backups, encrypted drives, secure folders labeled with legal notes. If they wanted a war, I was making sure I had the artillery. And while they thought I was sitting in Portugal licking my wounds, I was laying the groundwork for something they'd never see coming. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, the final straw arrived. A message from my cousin Emily, the only relative who hadn't turned against me. A photo. My parents' living room. Mom, Dad, and Adam sitting around the table, papers spread out everywhere. In the center, my name. My company's logo. Legal documents. Emily's caption read, "They're planning to sue you for damages. They said you ruined Adam's reputation." I stared at that photo until my vision blurred. My own family, my blood, was about to drag me through court with forged documents and lies. And in that moment, something inside me changed completely. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was purpose. They wanted war. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat there, listening to the Atlantic wind rattle the windows, staring at my laptop screen. The anger had burned itself out days ago. What was left wasn't fire. It was steel. The kind of exhaustion that lives deep in your bones, where you finally accept that some people will never love you for who you are. Only for what they can take. For the next few days, I barely stepped outside. The city around me was alive, kids shouting in the alley, tourists laughing over espresso and pastries, but inside my small apartment, I was unraveling. I'd sit on the couch for hours, staring at nothing, trying to convince myself this wasn't happening. That maybe it was all some awful misunderstanding. That my mom hadn't actually sat there, calm and deliberate, helping Adam plan my destruction. That my dad, the same man who once taught me how to fix a bike chain with grease-stained hands, wasn't silently letting it happen. But denial doesn't change facts. 3 days later, they arrived. The lawsuit papers. An international courier. Neat envelope. No return address. But I knew that handwriting on the sender's line, my mother's looping, elegant script, the same she used to sign my report cards in grade school. Inside were photocopied evidence, files, screenshots, messages, invoices, most of them doctored beyond belief. Fake conversations showing me promising to invest in Adam's company. Forged invoices that made it look like I'd accepted payments, then backed out. They were accusing me of breach of trust and defamation, claiming I'd sabotaged Adam's reputation by pulling out of a deal I'd never agreed to in the first place. The letter ended with one line that made my stomach twist. "We still love you, but you've left us no choice." That was the moment I broke. I remember sliding down the wall, the papers slipping from my hands and scattering across the floor. The air smelled faintly of printer ink and salt from the ocean drifting through the cracked window. I sat there as daylight faded, surrounded by the mess, the physical proof of how far they'd fallen. I wasn't angry anymore. Just empty. For the next week, I moved like a ghost. Ate when I remembered. Slept when exhaustion forced me to. I ignored Ethan's calls, ignored my emails. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, my parents and Adam sitting at that table, calm, focused, methodical. My own mother, forging her son's downfall as if it were just another family chore. Then one evening, a small knock on the door cut through the silence. It was my Airbnb host, Clara, a kind, older woman with soft eyes. She stood there holding a small dish of food. She spoke in Portuguese, but I caught enough of it to understand. She'd noticed I hadn't been out in days. Said I looked tired. "Eat," she said gently, placing the dish on the counter. "And breathe. The DC is for healing, not hiding." It sounds simple, maybe even silly, but that moment cracked something open in me. A stranger, someone who owed me nothing, had shown more kindness than the people I'd bled for my entire life. That night, I walked down to the cliffs. The wind was sharp, the sea restless, but the noise was cleansing. I watched the sun melt into the horizon and whispered to the waves, "They're not winning." And for the first time, I believed it. The next morning, I woke early. Shaved. Cleaned the apartment. Opened my laptop. The lawsuit wasn't real, not yet. It was a bluff dressed up as legality. They wanted me scared, reactive, desperate to make peace. But I wasn't that man anymore. Instead, I started researching. Calm. Focused. Methodical. When I called Ethan again, he didn't bother with pleasantries. I think he heard it in my voice, the shift. I need to know exactly what happens if they push this, I said. They won't get far, he replied. They have no legal standing. But if they keep submitting falsified documents, we'll have proof of perjury and fraud. You could end this for good. I hesitated. Would that mean pressing charges? Yes. Against all of them? Silence stretched between us. Then I said quietly, maybe it's time. The idea felt heavy, but also, somehow, peaceful. Like I was finally ready to put everything in its proper place. Over the following weeks, I started rebuilding. Slowly. I rented a small long-term apartment near the coast. Found a co-working space and eased back into consulting work. I took small contracts, enough to keep my mind busy. On the surface, it looked like recovery. But beneath that calm routine, I was building something else. A case. Every night before bed, I organized files, labeled by date, each folder a bullet, each timestamp a nail in the coffin. Screenshots, metadata, bank logs, even the PDFs they'd sent me. Piece by piece, I built the story of what they'd done. And while I was gathering evidence, they weren't idle either. One morning, my phone lit up with over 70 missed calls, all from an unknown number. Then came the texts. Your father's in the hospital. Please answer. For a second, my hands went cold. My breath stopped. I called every hospital in Seattle. No one had admitted a patient by his name. It was a lie. Another ploy to pull me back in. They still knew exactly which strings to pull. They knew love had always been my weak spot. That night, I walked along the beach until my shoes filled with cold sand. Watched couples laughing, kids chasing waves, life just happening. And I wondered, what would it feel like to have a family that didn't view you as an asset? One that just loved you because you existed? Somewhere between the salt air and the dark water, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last time they ever used fear to control me. From that moment on, everything I did had purpose. I updated my business records. Moved my consulting LLC offshore. Changed my tax residency. Hired a Portuguese lawyer and had him go through local privacy laws line by line. Turns out, my family couldn't touch a single thing I owned in Portugal without an international court order. It was the first real safety I'd felt in years. Still, safety didn't erase the ache. Some nights, I'd wake up around 3 a.m., chest tight, my mother's voice echoing in my head. Family always comes first. I'd stare at the ceiling, the words circling like ghosts. Because now I finally understood what that phrase meant to them. Family first wasn't love. It was ownership. It was around 3 a.m. when I finally gave in and opened a message I'd been ignoring for weeks. Adam. The text was long, defensive, bitter, and soaked in that same warped confidence he'd always had. You think you're better than us now? You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for me. I made you cool in high school. I helped you get your first car. You owe me. You've always owed me. I stared at the screen, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Not the angry kind, just pure disbelief. Even now, with everything burning around him, he was still rewriting history. Still the same kid who could never take responsibility for anything. I typed my reply slowly. You're right about one thing. I do owe you. You taught me who not to trust. Then I hit block. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't in survival mode anymore. I wasn't playing defense. They thought they'd broken me. They had no idea that the quietest people, the ones they underestimate the most, are often the ones who rebuild in silence. And when they do, they come back sharper than anyone expects. As the first light of dawn spilled through my window, I closed my laptop and looked out over the Atlantic. The water shimmered gold, the sky soft and open. And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The next time my family heard my name, it wouldn't be as their scapegoat. It would be as the man who turned everything they tried to steal into the weapon that destroyed their lives. The months that followed blurred together, calm, quiet, and strangely healing. I didn't make any declarations or vengeance speeches. There was no need. I just started living. By April, Lisbon had become home. I had a rhythm again. Early morning walks along the harbor. Strong espresso from the cafe downstairs, where the barista finally learned my order by heart. Hours of deep work in a sunlit co-working space overlooking the Tagus River. I was consulting for 3 companies by then, 2 in Europe, 1 in Canada, and for the first time in years, I wasn't just stable. I was thriving. And when I wasn't working, I started picking up pieces of the old me. The version that used to exist before the chaos. Photography, for one. I'd always had an eye for light and shadow, for the kind of moments most people overlook. Now, I carried my camera everywhere, capturing fishermen hauling in their nets at dawn, raindrops on cobblestones, strangers laughing beneath pastel-colored balconies. It hit me one morning, standing by the waterfront with my lens focused on the horizon. These photos were metaphors. Little proofs that beauty could exist after destruction. That something broken could still reflect the light. But my recovery wasn't just emotional. It was strategic. I rebuilt my business from the ground up, new name, new structure, new everything. Carter Digital Systems. Leaner. Smarter. Bulletproof. Ethan helped me draft airtight contracts and register assets across multiple jurisdictions. A Portuguese accountant walked me through tax protections and international safeguards. By summer, I had doubled my income from the year before. And yet, I told no one. No updates to old friends. No posts. No breadcrumbs. I wanted to see what my silence would do. Turns out, it rattled them. In late May, my cousin Emily, the only one who'd quietly stayed in touch, sent me a message. They're saying you went broke. That you had a breakdown and fled to avoid debt collectors. I actually smiled when I read that. It was almost poetic. The same people who'd spent months trying to destroy my name were now rebuilding it with lies just to ease their guilt. But they didn't know that while they were busy spinning stories, I'd been writing one of my own. For months, I'd been compiling everything, every forged document, every manipulated text, every fake loan application. Ethan helped me organize it into a 90-page dossier titled simply, Carter vs. Carter Family, Evidence of Fraud, Defamation, and Identity Theft. We didn't file it. Not yet. I wanted it ready, like a loaded chamber, for when the moment came. And while I waited, life kept unfolding. That summer, one of my European clients, a mid-sized marketing firm in Spain, made an offer that caught me off guard. They wanted to bring me on as a silent equity partner. They said my systems had transformed their operations, that my name carried weight. 20% ownership. Full creative control. It wasn't just an opportunity. It was validation. For the first time in my life, I didn't just have money, I had leverage. The kind that couldn't be stolen or forged. That night, after signing the partnership papers, I took myself to dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Tagus. The air was warm, the lights from the bridge flickered like stars on the water. When the waiter found out it was my birthday week, he brought over a small chocolate cake with a single candle. 42. My phone sat face down on the table. No messages. No missed calls. And for once, that silence didn't hurt. It felt right. I watched the candle flicker for a long moment before blowing it out, not with a wish, but with a quiet, steady certainty. When I got home later that night, I checked my email one last time. And there it was. A new message. Sender, Mom. Subject line. Enough is enough. I hovered over that email for a full minute before opening it. The subject line, enough is enough, felt almost cinematic. Like the last act of a movie I never wanted to be in. When I finally clicked, there it was. Jack, we heard you've been living in Europe, acting like none of us exist. Your father's been worried sick. Adam's had a rough year, and you've made everything worse. Whatever you think we did, we were only trying to help. It's time to come home and fix this. You owe your brother a public apology. We're meeting with a lawyer soon. And if you keep avoiding us, we'll have to move forward without your cooperation. Mom. I read it twice, maybe 3 times, my expression blank. The old me would have panicked. I would have stayed up until sunrise writing and rewriting a peacekeeping response, trying to reason, trying to soften things, trying to save a relationship that was already ashes. But that man was gone. I didn't reply. I didn't even hesitate. I just dragged the email into my evidence folder. One more exhibit in the ever-growing file titled How Far They Fell. That summer, everything changed. Carter Digital Systems started to take off. What had begun as a one-man rebuild turned into something real, something powerful. I hired 2 part-time analysts, expanded into 3 countries, and even started hosting online lectures on small business cybersecurity. The irony wasn't lost on me. My favorite presentation was about protecting yourself from people you think you can trust. Each month that passed without hearing from my family felt like exhaling a little more. Like surfacing after years of treading water. I'd wake early, watch the sunrise from my balcony, drink my coffee in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't feel lonely anymore. I'd earn my peace. But peace, I've learned, never lasts long. One afternoon, just when life felt stable again, my phone buzzed with a message from Emily, my cousin, the quiet observer in all this chaos. They found out about your company. My heart stuttered. How? I typed back. Seconds later, another message popped up. Adam bragged about it at a family barbecue. Said you're doing shady offshore stuff, that you stole his business ideas. Your mom told people you're under investigation. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Then, I started laughing. Quiet at first, then louder, until it echoed through the apartment. The sheer audacity. They couldn't ruin me through lies anymore, so they built new ones, taller, uglier, desperate structures of fiction they could hide behind. But what they didn't know was that every word they spoke was now another nail in their own coffin. I called Ethan that night. It's time, I said simply. Time for what? For them to see what happens when you push someone too far. He didn't need more explanation. Within a week, the machine was in motion. Ethan prepared everything, a formal cease and desist, followed by a notice of intent to sue citing defamation, fraud, and attempted identity theft. But we didn't send it straight to them. No, that would have given them the satisfaction of outrage. Instead, we sent it through someone they trusted, a family attorney who had handled my parents' wills and property affairs for decades. That way, when those envelopes landed on their doorstep, it wouldn't look like an attack. It would look like judgment. Official. Cold. Undeniable. For days, nothing. Then weeks. The silence was deafening and satisfying. Until one morning, Emily messaged me again. Your mom called an emergency family meeting. Adam's freaking out. Your dad's been pacing all day. I didn't respond right away. I was sitting at my desk overlooking the harbor, sunlight spilling like liquid gold across the water. My coffee steamed beside me. My inbox pinged with new client requests. For the first time in my entire life, they were the ones spiraling, and I was the one sitting in peace. That night, as Lisbon glittered beneath the balcony and music drifted up from the streets, I realized something simple but powerful. Revenge doesn't always come as fire and fury. Sometimes it's the sound of your own laughter echoing in a quiet apartment you pay for with clean money. Sometimes it's watching the people who tried to destroy you finally trip over the web of their own lies. Revenge, I realized, could look like peace. Still, as the weeks rolled on and the world kept turning, a single thought kept whispering in the back of my mind, a reminder of who I was dealing with. Power doesn't silence desperate people. It corners them. And when cornered, my family had never been the kind to surrender. They were about to get very desperate. A few days after Emily's message, I woke up to an email from Ethan. The subject line was short and sharp, urgent. For a split second, my stomach clenched. I thought maybe something had gone wrong with the lawsuit paperwork. But when I opened it, it wasn't a warning. It was something far bigger. Jack, I think I found something you'll want to see. Call me. When I dialed, he picked up almost immediately, his voice caught somewhere between disbelief and a bitter kind of amusement. Your brother, he said, just tried to register a business under your company's name. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Wait, what? Yeah, he said, and I could hear him typing in the background. Carter Digital Systems. Same name, different jurisdiction. Filed 2 weeks ago in Washington. He used a fake address and your old phone number, probably hoping to confuse clients or impersonate your firm. Listed himself as co-founder and your mom as guarantor. I just sat there, staring at the wall, phone pressed to my ear. The audacity was beyond comprehension. They hadn't learned a damn thing. Ethan, I said slowly, the words coming out like controlled fire. If he's pretending to be me, that's actionable, right? He chuckled, that low, dangerous kind of laugh lawyers get when they smell blood in the water. Not just actionable, Jack. It's criminal. He's impersonating an international business. You could bury him for this. And that's when the idea formed. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Out of precision. If they wanted to play games with my name, then I was going to make damn sure that name carried power. That afternoon, I called Miguel, my business partner in Spain. Smart, relentless, and always looking for expansion opportunities. Miguel, I said, remember how you mentioned wanting to break into the North American market? Si, amigo, he replied. Why? I might have a contact, I said, my tone careful. Someone's been using our brand illegally in the US. If we move fast, we can claim that entire territory cleanly, legally, and profitably. He didn't even hesitate. Let's do it. Within a week, Carter Digital Systems wasn't just a European consultancy anymore. It was a registered multinational entity. We filed trademarks in multiple countries, secured copyright protection, and published an official press release announcing our US expansion. It went live on every major business platform, LinkedIn, Crunchbase, digital directories, complete with a sleek PR statement Miguel's team drafted. 2 days later, Adam's fake company was hit with a legal takedown. Every registration he filed was invalidated. But that wasn't the real revenge. The real victory came afterward. Once the official expansion went public, the fallout started almost instantly. My inbox lit up, not from clients, but from his contacts. Apparently, Adam had been using my name to network, posing as my business partner, pitching collaborations, even collecting money. Now that Carter Digital had gone public, those same people were suspicious. Some sent me screenshots of messages he'd written, accusing me of cutting him out of the deal. But one email in particular made my blood run cold. Jack, I hope this reaches you directly. Your brother's been using your name to solicit funds for a joint venture. I sent him a $12,000 deposit for marketing materials last month. He stopped responding. I've already contacted the authorities. I stared at the message for a long time, the weight of it sinking in. Then I forwarded everything to Ethan. Within hours, he'd compiled a detailed report, complete with timestamps, screenshots, and registry data, and sent it straight to the state attorney general's office. Then I waited. And while I waited, I worked. Harder than ever. I poured every ounce of energy into growing my company, into building something so clean, so airtight, that it could never again be touched by the shadows of my past. Contracts multiplied. Clients came pouring in. I expanded my freelancer network, streamlined onboarding, and closed 2 major European deals that doubled our quarterly revenue. Every new payment felt like one more chain snapping loose. Every success felt like peeling away another layer of their control. But the real change wasn't in my finances. It was in my head. For the first time in my life, I was the one holding the cards. And they were running out of moves. Then one afternoon, my inbox pinged again. A new email. From Mom. We need to talk. Adam's in trouble. Please. No blame this time. No guilt trip. Just desperation leaking through the text. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Emily. What happened? I asked. She hesitated. The police came to the house. Something about fraud and false filings. They confiscated Adam's laptop. Your dad's furious. Your mom's blaming you, obviously. Of course she was. Still, I didn't gloat. Didn't post about it. Didn't even tell Ethan. I just let the truth take care of itself. Gravity, once set in motion, doesn't need your help. A week later, another message came, this time from an anonymous address. You think this is funny? They're threatening to freeze my accounts. You could have helped me, but you had to be the hero. Congrats, Jack. You won. I didn't even finish reading it. I deleted the message, grabbed my jacket, and walked down to the river. The evening air was cool and salty. The water shimmered with the lights of the bridge, and the city murmured softly behind me, alive, indifferent, free. And that's when it hit me. My revenge hadn't been dramatic. It hadn't been loud or cruel. It had been precise, quiet, surgical. The kind of revenge that leaves no smoke, no screaming, no collateral damage, just silence. Because I hadn't shouted. I hadn't threatened. I hadn't struck back in anger. I'd simply built something real, something they could never touch, and let their lies crumble under their own weight. And as the wind rolled off the Atlantic, I realized the truth I'd been chasing for years. You don't destroy the people who tried to ruin you by fighting them. You destroy them by becoming everything they'll never be. Fate, it seemed, still had a few cards left to play. A few days after Emily's last message, my phone buzzed with a call from Miguel. His voice carried that amused edge that usually meant something ridiculous had crossed his desk. "Jack," he said, chuckling under his breath, "you're not going to believe this. We just received a partnership inquiry from a US business calling itself Carter Solutions LLC. The name alone made my pulse tighten. Go on." The email, he continued, was from a woman named Margaret Carter. My jaw tightened. "That's my mother." Miguel exhaled softly, half disbelieving. "She introduced herself as your mother, yes. Said your company has been misrepresenting family interests and that she wanted to discuss licensing rights for the brand. She even wrote something about restoring the family image." I could almost picture her typing it out, the carefully chosen words, the forced professionalism, trying to sound powerful while pretending none of the past existed. Wrapping deceit in fake civility was her specialty. "Miguel," I said calmly, "forward it to me. Don't reply." When the email arrived in my inbox, I opened it with an odd mix of dread and fascination. It was written like a corporate letter, full of buzzwords she didn't remotely understand. Synergy, brand cohesion, partnership development. Words lifted straight from some business magazine she probably picked up at the airport. But the line that stood out was at the bottom, in her familiar cursive signature. "We're prepared to resolve this privately, as families should." That word again, family. Their shield and their weapon. And that was the moment I knew exactly how this would end. That evening, I sat in my office by the harbor, the sun bleeding into the Atlantic, and opened the 90-page dossier Ethan and I had built over months. Every file. Every forgery. Every recorded call. Every lie. All it needed was one final update, their latest attempt to profit off my company's name. When it was done, I printed the full report, signed the affidavit, and scanned it back to Ethan with a single message. "File it." He didn't ask for confirmation. By the end of the week, formal complaints had been lodged with both the Washington state authorities and the EU Intellectual Property Office. My family's fake ventures, fraudulent filings, and forged business documents were now official matters of investigation. And still, I didn't celebrate. Didn't toast. Didn't smile. I just sat there, breathing. Really breathing. Watching the light play on the waves outside my window. For the first time in years, I wasn't the scapegoat. I was the architect. The quiet hand behind the curtain. But deep down, I knew this was only the calm before the real reckoning. Because my family had built their identity around control. And the moment they realized they'd lost it completely, they'd crumble. The fallout came in waves. Small at first. Almost quiet. Then each one hit harder than the last. The first call came from Ethan. His tone was professional, but I could hear the undertone of gravity. "They've officially opened an investigation," he said. "Your brother's name is listed as a respondent in a fraud case. Your mother's is attached as a co-signer on forged documents. There's even talk of tax evasion tied to the fake company." For a long moment, I just listened. The hum of my laptop fan. The muffled sound of Lisbon traffic outside. "Jack," Ethan said finally, voice softening. "You did everything by the book. Whatever happens next, it's not on you." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and went out to the balcony. The tide was rolling in, the sky streaked pink and gold, the kind of sunset that looks like closure. The next morning, the messages started. From Mom. "How could you do this to your own family? You've humiliated us. They're freezing our accounts. Your father can't even access his pension. You've gone too far." From Dad. "You didn't have to make this public. We could have handled it privately. You should have just come home." And from Adam, predictably venomous. "You think you're better than us? You ruined my life. They took my car, my business accounts. Are you happy now?" But this time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. For years, they had used my empathy as a leash, guilt-tripping me into submission, dressing manipulation as love. But now, that leash was gone. Cut clean. A few weeks later, Emily called. Her voice was cautious, almost apologetic. "Jack, it's chaos here." "What happened?" "The house was seized," she said softly. "Unpaid taxes. Your parents are staying with Aunt Linda. Adam's crashing with some friend out of town. Everyone's blaming everyone else. Your mom blames your dad. Your dad blames Adam. And Adam," she sighed, "he blames you." "Let them," I said quietly. "They built the fire." I just stopped holding the matches. Still, part of me wanted to know more, some lingering fragment of curiosity I couldn't quite kill. So she told me. After the investigation began, everything unraveled fast. The fake business accounts were frozen. The tax discrepancies surfaced. Then came the audit. Turns out Adam had been funneling money through false invoices, all under my name. Payments, transfers, even deposits disguised as project fees. He thought no one would ever trace them. But they did. And when investigators pulled the records, my parents' names showed up too, not as bystanders, but as verifiers. That was enough to trigger a full financial review. Their credit lines were suspended. Their house, partially tied to the business filings, was flagged for seizure. The small town they'd lived in for decades? Found out fast. My mom's image, the sweet, church-going matriarch who just wanted her boys to reconcile, crumbled overnight. Neighbors stopped visiting. Her bridge club quietly removed her name from the roster. Even her closest friends avoided her calls. Dad lost most of his savings to legal fees. Adam, true to form, tried blaming everyone in rotation. First Dad, then technical errors, then me. But the paperwork didn't lie. The timestamps, the forged signatures, the email headers, all of it pointed straight back to him. Within months, he was ordered to repay the investors he'd conned under my name. When he couldn't, they took him to civil court. He settled, narrowly dodging criminal charges, but his credit, reputation, and business were gone. And through it all, I stayed quiet. No posts. No speeches. No satisfaction. Just peace. Because this was never about revenge anymore. It was about freedom, the kind that comes when the people who tried to destroy you finally collapse under the weight of their own lies. They had spent years turning my name into their scapegoat. Now that same name was the reason their entire world was burning down. And for once, I didn't feel pity. Only release.as for my parents. The state eventually dropped the criminal charges, in exchange for their cooperation. But by then, the damage had already sunk its teeth in. They lost the house. Their account stayed frozen for months. My mother's health began to fail under the stress, and my father, always too proud to admit defeat, cut himself off from most of the extended family. I never reached out. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. They had taught me what conditional love looked like, and I had finally learned to live without it. About a year later, one quiet evening, I got another call from Emily. "You should know," she said softly, "your mom wanted to send you a letter. She never did, but she told me to tell you she didn't mean for it to go that far." I didn't speak right away. The sound of the waves outside my window filled the silence. Then I said, simply, "Tell her I forgive her." And I meant it. Because forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me. It was the final weight I refused to carry. Life went on, quietly but beautifully. Carter Digital flourished, first across Europe, then into Asia. I built a small team, bought a modest house near the coast, and learned enough Portuguese to joke with the locals at my favorite cafe. Every so often, I'd get emails from old friends back home. "Ever coming back to visit?" they'd ask. I'd always reply, "Maybe someday." But deep down, I knew I never would. 2 years later, I got one last message from Adam. "I heard your company's doing well. Good for you. Guess you were always the smart one." No apology. No remorse. Just envy dressed up as humility. I didn't reply. That night, I walked the cliffs, the same path I'd taken the first week I arrived in Portugal, lost and hollowed out. The sea below roared, wild and endless. I thought about how far I'd come, not by luck, but by choosing myself, finally, over the people who never would have. At the edge of the cliffs, the wind tugged at my shirt, and I whispered into the wind, "You can't lose a family that never loved you unconditionally." For a long time, I just stood there, listening to the waves crash below, the horizon painted in fading gold. Then I smiled. Small. Genuine. Unburdened. They had taken everything they could, my trust, my name, my sense of belonging. But what they could never touch was the peace I'd built in their absence. The kind that comes when you finally stop needing people to see your worth. As the sun dipped below the Atlantic, I turned and walked home. No guilt. No noise. No ghosts.